Imagine 2027. At a Kremlin press conference, a Russian leader unrolls an ancient map and says just one sentence: "It is time to reclaim what has always been ours." Financial markets across 14 countries collapse within the hour. And you're asking, how is this even possible in the 21st century? To understand what reforming something means, you first have to understand what you're trying to bring back. The Russian Empire at its peak in 1914 covered 22.8 million square kilometers, the third largest state in human history. From Warsaw to Alaska, from Finland down to Afghanistan. But here's where it gets interesting. It was a colossus on clay feet. Inside this giant, 130 distinct peoples. Half the population wasn't ethnically Russian. Every third subject spoke a language the Tsar officially refused to recognize. Industrialization lagged a full generation behind the West. The army fought with outdated rifles, while Germany already had machine guns. And yet, this state lasted 3 centuries. Now Moscow talks about restoration. But restoration of what exactly? There are 3 versions, and they lead to radically different worlds. Version 1, cultural, uniting the Russian world, everyone who speaks Russian or identifies with Russian civilization. Version 2, geopolitical, pulling former Soviet republics back under Moscow's control through puppet regimes and gas contracts. Version 3, territorial, literal annexation of land with hard borders and a flag. Each version pulls the entire world toward a completely different future. Hold on, maybe you're thinking, this is just fantasy. 21st century, the UN, nuclear weapons, NATO. Nobody can just reform an empire. Let's test that assumption. 2008. Russia invades Georgia. South Ossetia and Abkhazia snap off. The West protests, then adapts. Sanctions? Almost zero. 2014. Crimea. First time since 1945 that one state in Europe annexes the territory of another. The reaction? Sanctions. Russia was in the G8, now G7. The difference? Putin won without losing anything fundamental. 2022, full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The largest land war in Europe since World War II. The reaction this time is more serious. But the war continues. The precedent exists. More than that, in the Kremlin, this strategy has an official name: the gathering of Russian lands. The Patriarch calls it a sacred duty. State TV hosts draw maps where Warsaw is ancient Russian soil. This isn't fantasy. This is active state rhetoric. The question isn't, do they want this? The question is, what happens if they try it seriously? So let's imagine. Russia achieves a ceasefire in Ukraine on its own terms. That's the starting point. Step 1. Belarus. Lukashenko already clings to Moscow with both hands. After 2020, it's a de facto Moscow protectorate. Official reunification would look like bureaucratic paperwork. Sign some documents, rename some ministries, done. One state absorbed into the new empire without a single shot fired. Step 2. Moldova and Transnistria. Transnistria has been a Moscow-controlled enclave since 1992. Moldova is the poorest country in Europe, economically vulnerable, with a large pro-Russian minority in the south. Economic pressure, media pressure, agents of influence, and suddenly you have a popular referendum. Step 3. The Baltics. And here everything changes. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. NATO members since 2004. Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all. Now Russia isn't facing a collective West arguing about sanctions. Now there are American, British, Polish, and French soldiers in the way. The scenario branches into two paths. Path A: Russia stops. A soft version of the empire. Belarus, Moldova, maybe Armenia through peace deals, without direct collision with NATO. Formally not Imperial Russia, but Union State 2.0. In reality, Moscow sets foreign policy, keeps military bases, controls the media. Path B: Russia doesn't stop. A provocation in Latvia, testing the alliance's resolve, protecting Russian speakers. And here, we enter the most dangerous scenario since 1962. This is where most what-if videos stop. We won't. Russia has the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet. Officially, 6,257 warheads. More than the United States. More than every other nuclear power combined. Russia's nuclear doctrine is not only in retaliation. It allows for first use in case of an existential threat to the state. Now ask yourself, if NATO wins conventionally on a battlefield in Estonia, does that count as an existential threat? The people sitting in the Kremlin say yes. And here's the most terrifying paradox of our time. Russia's nuclear arsenal is simultaneously the only reason imperial restoration is even possible, because NATO is deterred, and the only reason it can never fully succeed, because at the critical moment, neither side will back down. Strategic risk researchers have a term for this: the Kremlin nuclear paradox. The weapon that saves you from defeat also makes victory impossible. But let's set the nuclear scenario aside. Let's say the soft version plays out. A new union state with Belarus, Moldova, maybe parts of Georgia. The Kremlin is triumphant. What happens next? Here's what the propaganda pictures never show you. Problem 1. The economy. Russia currently spends over 40% of its federal budget on the military. Its entire GDP is smaller than Spain's. Sanctions have cut off access to technology. Microchips for weapons are being smuggled through Kazakhstan inside Samsung refrigerators. This is not a state building an empire. This is a state selling its future to pay for today. Problem 2. Demographics. Russia loses population every year. Combat casualties, immigration of the educated class, collapsing birth rates. Since 2022, between 500,000 and 1 million people have left Russia, mostly young, technologically skilled. These are not the people you keep home when you're building an empire. Problem 3. The peoples within. Russia has 193 officially recognized ethnic groups. Chechnya, Tatarstan, Bashkortostan, Dagestan, the Sakha Republic, the size of half of Australia. When Russia absorbs new subject peoples, Ukrainians, Moldovans, Georgians, it doesn't just add kilometers, it adds resentment. Every absorbed population is a potential hotbed of resistance. The British, French, Ottoman, and Habsburg empires, none of them fell because a stronger enemy came along. They fell because the weight of their own diversity couldn't be held forever. Now let's talk about you. Even if you live thousands of miles from the borders of this new union state, this touches you directly. Energy. A new imperial Russia gains control over even larger oil and gas reserves. Moscow gets geopolitical leverage over Asia, India, and China, which is already balancing uncomfortably between the Kremlin and Washington. Food. Ukraine and Russia together account for roughly 30% of global wheat exports. The new union state controls that market. Algeria, Egypt, Tunisia, Yemen, countries where bread costs more than a day's wages, are completely dependent on those shipments. The hunger riots of 2011, The Arab Spring started with a spike in grain prices. Migration. If the Baltic scenario plays out even partially, we're talking about the largest refugee wave Europe has seen since 1945. Tens of millions of people in motion. Democracy as an idea. If Russia wins at reforming its empire, authoritarian regimes around the world receive one signal: this works. From Minsk to Pyongyang, from Tehran to Caracas. No scenario is a straight line. Here are 3 wildcards that could flip everything. Wildcard 1, China. Beijing and Moscow are partners without limits, officially. But China has never wanted a strong Russia. A strong Russia is a competitor, not a junior partner. If Moscow restores influence in Central Asia, that directly collides with Chinese interests. Beijing might quietly start pumping the brakes. Wildcard 2, internal coup. Russia is not a monolithic pyramid. It's a complex system of clans, oligarchs, security chiefs, and regional elites in constant uneasy balance. The Prigozhin mutiny of 2023 proved it. The system is more brittle than it looks. A new coup with different people and a different direction could change everything. Wildcard 3, technology. Drones, cyber attacks, autonomous systems. These are radically reshaping the balance of power. A small force with the right technology can stop a massive advance. Ukraine demonstrates this every day. Imperial restoration may become technologically impossible, too expensive, too exposed, too visible. So, what if Russia reforms the Russian Empire? The short answer? It can't. Not because of a lack of ambition, but because nobody can restore what has already fallen. Not Napoleon IV, the French Empire, not an Ottoman Sultan, the Porte, not the Habsburgs, Austria-Hungary. Time only moves forward. But the attempt to restore it, that is a real and lethally dangerous thing. Even a failed attempt costs millions of human lives, destroys states, famines, deportations, war crimes. We've already seen the price of even a partial attempt. The question isn't whether Russia wins this game. The question is whether we allow the game to begin in earnest. Because every time someone says, maybe they just want security guarantees, or maybe we should give a little ground, they are not talking about peace. They are talking about the price that someone else will pay. If this video made you think, drop a like and tell me in the comments, what do you think is the most underestimated danger in this scenario? Subscribe. Next episode, what if China invades Taiwan and nobody comes?